as a joke on a pre-party. I kissed Ron in front of him to get a reaction, but he took it serious, and I kissed my boyfriend's best friend just to make him jealous. So let me start off by saying I know it sounds stupid, and I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I know that sounds like an excuse, but honestly, things just spiraled. And before I knew it, I was sitting here, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. I swear, at first it was all just one big joke, one of those things you do without thinking about the consequences. But I guess I should start from the beginning. Before everything went downhill, life was, I wouldn't say perfect, but it was good. I had a decent job and a guy who, well, wasn't exactly my type, but was good to me in a way no one else had been. We weren't married, never got that far. I met my husband when I was still in my early 20s. I had just left a relationship where both were too young and too reckless, and things between us were always a bit chaotic. We had these amazing highs, and then the lowest of lows. But reality hit hard, and we just weren't right for each other. A few weeks after my breakup, my friends dragged me out one night to some random event, and that's where I met my husband. At first, I didn't think much of him. I mean, he was cute and all, but I wasn't really looking for anything serious, nor had I forgotten about my ex. I had my hands full with work and my mental health, and the last thing I needed was to complicate my life with another relationship. But he was persistent. He kept showing up, kept asking me out, and eventually I caved. I didn't expect much from it, honestly. I thought maybe we'd have some fun, and that would be it. But before I knew it, we were spending more and more time together. He was different from anyone I'd ever been with. Stable, reliable, the kind of guy who actually showed up when he said he would. That's what drew me in, I think. After everything I'd been through, it was nice to be with someone who wasn't full of drama. We moved in together a couple of years later, and for a while things were really good. He wasn't perfect, but who is? He had his flaws, but I could deal with them. At least that's what I thought at the time. Anyway, this all brings me to the party where everything changed in our relationship, the pre-party, because that's where things really started to go wrong. It was supposed to be just a casual get-together, you know? A bunch of us hanging out before the main event, which was a concert from a local band none of us knew much about. Everyone was drinking, the music was loud, and the vibe was all over the place. I wasn't even planning on going at first, but a couple of my friends convinced me to come out. They thought I needed a break, and maybe they were right. My husband was there too, obviously. We weren't one of those couples that did everything together, but we had a group of friends together, so hanging out was always fun since everyone got along. That's where Ron comes in. Ron was one of those friends you don't think about twice, especially because he was my husband's best friend. We'd known each other for years, but nothing ever happened between us. Not even a hint of anything more than friendship. He was just Ron. One of the girls in the party had brought a drinking cards game. It wasn't the kind of game everyone sat down to play. She just approached the groups in the party and asked a question or proposed a challenge, depending on the card she had on her hands. That way, there wasn't really a choice of playing the game or not. When she got to us, I was talking to Ron and another couple of friends we had. I could see my husband close to the pool talking to some friends, but we weren't in the same conversation circle. She turned to me and said, "Kiss the person to your right or jump in the pool, choose fast." The person to my right turned out to be Ron, and I definitely wasn't going to jump in the pool. So when I kissed him, it was supposed to be funny. Like, one of those dumb things you do in the moment because everyone's watching and you want to get a reaction. I wasn't thinking about it, really. I didn't think it would be a problem. People were laughing, egging us on, and I thought it would be funny to keep the game going. Except my husband didn't laugh. He didn't even seem mad. He just looked hurt, confused maybe? I don't know. It was like he couldn't process what was happening, and before I could even explain, he walked out, left the party, left me standing there, and that's when I realized I might have taken things too far. The thing is, I didn't mean anything by it. It wasn't supposed to be serious. But at that moment, everything started to feel very real, very quickly. I could see how upset he was, and suddenly, what was meant to be a joke didn't seem so funny anymore. Now here I am trying to figure out how to fix this mess, because yeah, maybe I crossed a line. And maybe, deep down, I knew exactly what I was doing. But the truth is, I never thought it would get to this point. After he walked out of the pre-party, things got weird. I didn't chase after him at first, partly because I didn't think it was that serious. I figured he'd cool off and come back in, maybe even laugh about it later, but he didn't. I stayed at the party, trying to enjoy the rest of the night, but my mind kept drifting to him. Every time I checked my phone, there were no messages, no missed calls. By the time I finally decided to leave, I was feeling a little guilty, but mostly just confused. When I got home, the house was dark. He wasn't there. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted him a simple, "Where are you?" but no response. Maybe he needed space, I thought. He'd probably gone to a friend's house to cool off, and by morning, things would go back to normal. The next morning, he still wasn't home. By this point, the guilt had really started to sink in. I mean, I kissed Ron in front of him like it was some kind of joke. It wasn't supposed to hurt him, but I guess I never stopped to think how he might feel seeing that. I tried to imagine what I'd think if the roles were reversed, and I realized, yeah, I'd be pissed, but I still didn't think it was enough to end things over. I spent the whole day trying to figure out what to do. My thoughts were similar to this. Should I call him again? Maybe I should just give him more time. He didn't block me or anything. I figure that's a good sign. He'd text me when he was ready to talk, right? Except he didn't. Days passed, and still nothing. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him, but it never was. By the end of the week, I was starting to get really worried. I didn't want to admit it, but a small part of me began to panic. What if he wasn't coming back? What if that stupid kiss had ruined everything? I finally caved and texted his other best friend, Steve, to see if he knew where my husband was. Steve's response was pretty short, just a, "He's okay, he just needs some space." No details, no explanation, just that. It didn't make me feel any better, though. In fact, it made me feel worse. Because if Steve was involved, that meant my husband was actually serious about this. After a few more days of radio silence, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Steve again and asked, begged him to get my husband to talk to me. I just wanted to know what was going on. Did he want to work this out? Was he done with me? I couldn't stand being in limbo, not knowing if my marriage was over or if I still had a chance to fix things. Steve finally agreed to talk to him, and after what felt like forever, I got a message. It was short, just a, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped when I read it. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. We met up at a cafe, and the moment I saw him, I could tell he was different. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much since that night. But there was something else, too, something colder. He wasn't his usual self, the guy who would always find a way to crack a joke, even when things were tense. We sat down and I didn't even know where to start. I wanted to apologize, explain that it was just a stupid, meaningless joke, that I didn't want to hurt him. But before I could say anything, he cut me off. "I don't get it," he said, his voice flat. "Why would you do that, right in front of me?" I didn't know how to answer. At that moment, everything I had rehearsed in my head fell apart. I tried to explain that it wasn't serious, that it didn't mean anything, but the words felt weak as soon as they left my mouth. He wasn't buying it. "I know you say it was a joke," he continued, "but it didn't feel like one. You kissed him like I wasn't even there. Do you know how that made me feel?" I couldn't meet his eyes. I felt ashamed, like a kid who had been caught doing something they knew was wrong, but couldn't explain why they did it. I wanted to say something that would make it better, but I knew there wasn't anything I could say that would undo what I had done. "I just need to know," he said after a long pause. "Is there something going on with Ron? Has there ever been?" I shook my head. "No, of course not. It was just a stupid joke. I wasn't thinking. I would never cheat on you." He didn't say anything for a moment, just stared down at his coffee like he was trying to decide whether to believe me or not. I could see the doubt in his face, and it killed me. The trust we had built over the years was gone, just like that, all because of one careless moment. "I don't know if I can get past this," he said finally, his voice low. "It's not just the kiss. It's the fact that you didn't even think about how I'd feel. It's like I don't matter to you." And that hit me harder than anything else he could have said, because the truth is, he did matter. He mattered more than anything, but I had hurt him in a way that made him doubt that, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to fix it. We talked for a little while longer, but by the end of the conversation, it was clear that things weren't going back to normal anytime soon. He said he needed more time, more space to figure out what he wanted. I didn't know if that meant he was coming back or if this was the beginning of the end, and honestly, I was too scared to ask. Weeks passed after that conversation at the cafe. At first, I tried to give him the space he asked for, hoping he would come around and things would go back to the way they were. But the silence was unbearable. Every day without him in the house felt like a gaping hole, and I was filled with guilt. I tried keeping myself busy, throwing myself into work and spending time with friends, but it all felt like distractions. My mind was always on him, what he was doing, where he was, if he was thinking about me, about us. I replayed that night at the pre-party over and over again in my head, wishing I could take it all back, wishing I could undo the stupid kiss that had blown everything apart. A month after we talked at the cafe, he finally reached out again. Another text. Let's meet up. My heart sank when I saw it. I knew this was it. Either we were going to work things out, or he was going to tell me it was over. I tried not to overthink it, but by the time we met up, my nerves were shot. We sat down in the same cafe as before. The air between us felt heavy, like there was so much unsaid, so much hanging over us. He looked tired, more tired than last time, if that was even possible. And when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, like he was forcing himself to get through it. I've been thinking a lot, he said, his eyes fixed on the table. About everything. About us. I nodded, my heart racing. I was too scared to say anything, afraid I'd say the wrong thing and push him further away. I'm not going to lie, he continued. What you did hurt, and I don't know if I can fully trust you again. Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. I had been hoping for some kind of hope, a sign that we could fix this, but hearing him say he didn't know if he could trust me again felt like the final nail in the coffin. But, he added, I've also been thinking about everything we've been through, all the good times, the hard times, and I don't want to just throw that away.
Nope.
For the first time since the conversation started, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe there was a chance, after all. I need time, he said, looking me in the eye now. I'm not saying we're back to normal because we're not, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can rebuild this. Relief flooded over me, but it was mixed with anxiety. This wasn't a clear yes. It wasn't a guarantee that things would work out, but it was something. It was a chance, and I knew I had to hold on to that. I know I messed up, I said, my voice shaking. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at his coffee. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. I'm going to stay with Steve for a while longer, he said. I'm not ready to come home yet. I need more time, but we'll keep talking, okay? I nodded, trying to hide the disappointment. I wanted him to come home. I wanted us to go back to how things were, but I knew that wasn't going to happen overnight. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. We texted, called each other, and even met up a few times. Each time it felt like we were making progress, but it was slow, painfully slow. He was still distant, still guarded, and I couldn't blame him. I had broken something between us, and it wasn't going to be fixed with just a few apologies. One night, a couple of months after that second cafe meeting, he came over to pick up a few clothes. After he made his bag, we sat down in the living room. It was awkward at first. Neither of us really knew what to say. But then he broke the silence. I miss this, he said quietly. I miss being here. I miss us. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I blinked them back. I miss you too. He looked down at his hands and then back up at me. I want to try. I'm still not sure if I can get past what happened, but I want to try. For us. It wasn't the grand reconciliation I had dreamed of, but it was more than I had hoped for. I could see the doubt in his eyes, but there was also something else, something like hope, and that was enough for me.
And
he asked me out on a date that same week and told me to meet me at the restaurant. I was very excited until walking through the restaurant's door, and seeing my husband passionately kiss another woman. While seeing them, I immediately started crying and ran off the restaurant. When I got to my car, I got a text from my husband. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Was that what he was trying to do? He tricked me just to get revenge over a stupid kiss? I couldn't believe what was happening. In the end, I realized that trust, once broken, doesn't come back all at once. The moment I broke my husband's choice, things fell down the hill. It didn't matter how much he loved me. It would never be enough if he didn't trust me. Update. Hey everyone, I didn't expect to be writing an update, but a lot has happened since my last post. So, here we go. First of all, things between my husband and me have been complicated. After he moved out and we spent a few weeks away from each other, things were good for a while, but it wasn't exactly smooth sailing. We met up for coffee a few times to try to figure out a divorce deal without lawyers. It would be cheaper for both. I could tell he was still carrying the weight of what happened, and honestly, I was too. Every little argument seemed to circle back to the kiss, even if we didn't mention it directly. There was this unspoken tension that I could never quite shake, like I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. We tried therapy, couples counseling, not because we wanted to get back together, but because my mother-in-law suggested it so that we didn't break up with unfinished businesses. I thought it might help us talk through everything, get over the incident, and move on with our lives. We worked through a lot of our issues, talked about communication, trust, all that stuff. We eventually decided to try to get back together while still going to couples counseling, but no matter how many sessions we had, I could tell something was still missing. My husband just couldn't seem to fully move on from what I did. He said he forgave me, but I don't think he ever really did. It became clear that even though we were both trying, we were just on different pages. I wanted to put the past behind us and focus on the future, but he was still stuck in the hurt. He started pulling away again, coming home late from work, spending more time with his friends, and less with me. I asked him about it, but he always brushed it off, saying he was just busy or tired, but I knew something was wrong. Then I found out why. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I don't even know how I ended up finding out. One night, his phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, and a message popped up from someone named Carol. I didn't think much of it at first. My husband works with a lot of people, and I know a few of his female coworkers. But something about the way the message was worded made me pause. It wasn't anything too obvious, but it was just off. Too casual, too familiar. I didn't say anything that night. Instead, I started paying more attention. Over the next couple of weeks, I noticed more messages from Carol, and they weren't just about work. They were texting late at night, long after the workday had ended. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that it was nothing. But deep down, I knew something was going on. One night, after he fell asleep, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed his phone and read through the messages. It wasn't good. They weren't explicit, but there was definitely something there. A closeness, a flirtation that had no place in a marriage. My heart sank. It felt like everything we'd worked so hard to rebuild was crumbling all over again. I confronted him the next morning. I'll never forget the look on his face when I asked him about Carol. He looked shocked, caught off guard. But then he did the thing I was dreading most. He lied. He said she was just a friend from work, that there was nothing going on. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. Not after everything we'd been through. We argued for hours that day. He kept insisting that I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid because of what had happened between Ron and me. But I wasn't buying it. I knew what I had seen, and I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. Eventually, he admitted it. He said that nothing physical had happened between them, but that they had been talking a lot, too much. He said he didn't mean for it to turn into anything, that he was just lonely, that he felt disconnected from me after everything that happened with Ron. He said he had fun with her and was tired of trying to fix things with me. I was devastated. After everything we'd been through, after all the work we'd put into rebuilding our relationship, he had gone and done this. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had no right to be angry, considering what I had done. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that he had betrayed me. We decided to separate. He moved out again, and this time it feels more final. We're not officially divorced yet, but we're heading in that direction. I don't know if we'll ever get back together, and honestly, I'm not sure if I want to. The trust between us is completely shattered, and I don't know if it can ever be rebuilt. I've learned a lot about what I want and need in a relationship. I've realized that both of us made mistakes, and while I regret what happened with Ron, I also know that my husband's actions were his own choice. We both played a part in the breakdown of our marriage, but that doesn't make it any less painful. As for Ron, I haven't spoken to him since the night of the pre-party. After everything blew up with my husband, I realized that Ron was never really a part of my life in any meaningful way. He was just a symptom of the bigger problems in my marriage, not the cause. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I don't need any more drama in my life right now. So, that's where things stand. My husband and I are separated, and we're figuring out what comes next. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm trying to take things one day at a time. I've learned a lot from all of this, and while it's been incredibly painful, I'm hopeful that I'll come out the other side stronger. Thanks for reading, and thanks to everyone who offered advice and support after my original post. It's been a rough journey, but I'm getting through it, slowly but surely.